Welcome to the Phil and the Kid podcast. I'm Phil Gardner.
And I'm Spiro.
And today we're talking about renting the second R in Brrrr. Today on the Miami Vice podcast, we have a dickhead landlord and Colin Farrell. That's the new Miami Vice. We're too young.
We're too young for the new Miami Vice?
No, for the old Miami Vice.
What's the old one?
Fuck if I know. See, we're too young. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, my God.
This
coffee's so good.
It is good.
Yeah, so what's it called? Lion Coffee?
I think it's Lion.
So shout out to Lion Coffee. Great coffee spot on St. Clair West and, what is it, Alberta, I believe?
I don't know.
Something like
Close
that.
to Oakwood.
Close to Oakwood. It's really good. This is what we get before our meetings most of the time.
Yeah.
It has a cool little funky logo if you can
Yep.
kind of, like a little lion.
When we inevitably open a coffee shop, that'll probably be the supplier.
Yeah, let's hope. It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
They did not pay us to say this, dude. This is just really good coffee.
No, it is actually pretty fucking... Yeah.
Yeah, we've had one of those days today where, like, you know, you just kind of need that extra coffee, second or third. This is my third of the day.
That's a little much, man.
That's
That's getting into palpitation territory, I think. But...
End me now. No, I like it, man. Like, coffee keeps me going throughout the day, especially days
so
like...
European.
I haven't had much sleep lately. My sleep's been a little off. I've had a little bit of insomnia and that type of stuff.
Diving right in this week with Spiro's insomnia.
Yeah, sit down with Spiro. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you more about myself today. So yeah, I usually
Let Dr.
don't
Phil help you
really
out.
sleep. I usually don't get great sleep. The last week's been pretty rough for me. I'm getting like 2 or 3 hours a night. It's been rough. So coffee's really saved me. This is like the time of day where I kind of crash a little. You know, you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym later, and just kind of want to go lay down, cuddle up in my blanket, and take a good power nap. But I got to push through. I'm not a bitch.
How else are we gonna play FIFA later?
That's true. That's true too. Weekend league, it's full force. I gotta be ready for that. So coffee's helping me, and Lion Coffee is my favorite spot, my go-to spot.
There you go.
We should charge them next time for this. I feel like this was a paid ad.
Hit them. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's all right. So aside from insomnia, what's your?
I
your
have a
week been
funny
up to?
story too. So
Hey,
I went out for a couple of drinks with a couple of my university buddies yesterday night. Just casuals, nothing crazy. I was still home by 9:30, 10, so it wasn't like
Okay.
Yeah, it was a pretty.
It's about my bedtime.
Yeah, it was like one of those. I got to bed at a good time. It was good to go. Didn't drink too much. But so my friend, one of my best friends, roommate, since for 4 years. I went to elementary school, middle school, high school, and university with this guy. Like, we're like brothers. His name's Mike. So Mike and his girlfriend, who's also a good friend of mine from university, went to Niagara last weekend.
They didn't get married. Did they get married?
No.
Oh, okay. Is that a thing? Is
honestly,
Niagara like Vegas like
yeah,
that? Can you do that?
I honestly asked them,
Ghetto
did you
budget
get
Vegas?
married? I could see them getting married.
Okay,
soon.
carry
Shout
on,
out to
sorry.
you two. Anyways, so they're there, and he's like, yeah, I took her to a steakhouse. We went to Ruth's Chris.
Oh, nice.
Really, I love Ruth's Chris. Comes with a sizzling, buttery steak.
Oh, yeah.
Real good. So he's like, I'm in Ruth's Chris, and the whole time, and he's looking at me. He's like stressing. He's like, the whole time there was a guy sitting like a table diagonally across from them, and it was him and his wife. And he goes, I swear to God, it was Phil. He goes,
why
it
is
was
that a
Phil.
thing?
So he's like, the whole time he had his phone on. He's like, I think it's Phil. Like, even the wife looked like your wife. And he was
That's
like,
so funny.
This has to be him. So
How many
he's asking his
doppelgangers
girlfriend,
do I
like,
have?
is this Phil from Phil and the Kid? And he's like, so he's looking hard. He's like, I might go ask him. Like, I might go, hey, Phil, like, love the podcast, big fan.
That would
and
have
I
been
was
so
like,
funny because I was not in Niagara
yeah,
Falls.
so I was like, yeah, I don't think he was there. But I was like, if you did see Phil and it was Phil and you did say that, I'd probably make his day. He'd probably love it. He'd be like, I am
Hilarious.
Phil from Phil and the Kid.
I'm so
I'm
famous.
famous. Yeah. I told him he'd probably call me up right away.
Yeah.
Spiro, we've made it,
We
babe.
made it.
I'm like, no, it's just my buddy.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I started laughing.
Okay, so the reason that's so weird to me, there must be a bunch of Phils. I mean, we already learned last episode that I have
Mason Beck.
Mason Beck, who I think we finally got him off Instagram. My sister
Yeah,
reminded me
he's
last
gone.
week. He changed his name to Bitcoin in real estate or something, so I had to follow him along and get him again.
Jesus Christ.
But a buddy of mine from high school that we're talking about a lot of real estate stuff lately with messages me out of the blue last week asking me if I was at a Mexican restaurant at like 9 o'clock at night on, I don't know, like a Wednesday. And I just kind of looked at my phone. I looked up, I'm watching Netflix. I'm looking back at my phone. I went, no, I don't think so. Do you see a doppelganger?
Am I there?
And he's like, yeah, I swear to God, I thought that was you. Like, so I
think
just have
you're
one of those
getting
faces.
really big right now, like famous, not big size wise. You're actually losing weight. The keto Guido.
Thanks. Getting so huge.
How much you put down? What, like 10 pounds now?
Yeah, 10 pounds in like 2 weeks.
That's
it's
not bad.
I don't know.
And you're
It's all
feeling the
water weight to
keto
begin
high
with.
now.
Yeah, we're
feeling good.
Superhuman.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. No, I think I have one of those faces. I always get that, and like, oh hey, have I seen you somewhere? Usually it's a no. This actually happened at an inspection last night too. We were apparently I'm just everywhere lately.
Yeah.
But we were doing a home inspection on a deal that we're firming up on today. Woohoo! That's part of Phil's weekly story. Go firm up on deals. And the guy's pulling up, and the guy is pulling up at the property next door. It's like a 4-unit rental, and he's looking at me. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking back at me, and I'm like, this guy kind of sort of looks familiar, but I don't know why. And then he gets out of the car, and he asks me how much his house was selling for, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, do I know you? I'm like, fuck, maybe. I have no idea. You watch Phil and the Kid? No. And I had no idea where I remembered him from. And then like I went to Seneca for post-secondary kind of thing. And he was like,
there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Totally out of the blue, totally random. Haven't seen the guy in like a decade. Barely even talked to the guy when I was like at school.
How did he recognize you?
I don't know. I just got one of those faces, I guess.
Did you tell him to listen to the podcast?
No, it was very brief because then the client showed up at like the same time, kind of thing.
Like, I've had a few comments lately. Great job on the podcast. Keep it up.
Woo! Yeah, thanks, commenters.
It's nice to hear. It's always nice to hear feedback. And
that's good.
We know we're not like the biggest podcast, obviously, but at least we're helping. I mean, if we can help 5 people just kind of get through their real estate journey, or even just kind of learn 1 or 2 things every episode, I think that's all we can ask for, really. Like, we never made this to make money off of it or become famous or anything like that. We made it because first of all, we love listening to podcasts.
I'm not gonna lie, this whole process is pretty fun.
And it's a big learning experience. This past it's been a little bit over a month now. I'm almost 2 months.
Yeah, what is this, episode 6, 7?
This is episode 7.
7? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost
2 months.
Almost 2 months now. I think the whole process probably 3 months, and it's been for sure a learning process, and I think it's just been a really good time. Yeah, we've also gone really close. Like, people are asking me, like, do you and Phil ever do anything apart?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep.
Lots. Only sleep. Just sleep.
And our diets are pretty different. It's on the keto life.
For now.
Now. We're going to see. We're also going to hold ourselves. We just talked about this, but I'm putting this in the public now.
Oh, great.
5 times a week, 30 minutes, 5 times a week, cardio. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't matter where.
I got some ideas.
Doesn't matter when.
For 30 minutes. I'm just going to leave it there.
Oh, my God. I mean, no, that doesn't count.
Running
we'll
by
do
the
like,
beach.
okay, how about this? On our, we both have Apple Watches.
Currently, but yes. I'm not wearing
it.
It's
like the first time I've seen you not wearing it.
I know. I was getting a tan line, and I had to like even it out.
Tan line? It's
I can still
October.
See it. Yeah, I had to balance it back out.
Anyways, we can kind of keep track of our heart rates. You can do like cardio things that keep track, and keep your heart rate around over 140. I'm gonna get a text like, my heart rate is 140 right now. What's yours? 139, babe.
Weird. Okay, moving on.
Yeah. Oh, I also, so a few days ago, I went with my girlfriend. We went to what's it called? Square One. We went to, what's it called? The Rec Room. That's what it's called. The Rec Room.
There's a Rec Room at Square One?
There's a Rec Room at Square One. It's awesome. Oh. It's actually way, I don't know. Okay, the Rec Room downtown Toronto is really cool too. It's kind of hidden. Some of the rooms, like you see the bar, that's their main thing, and then the games are beside. This one, the bar was on the first floor with axe throwing, and yeah, really cool. And then you go downstairs, and there's like the arcade with like ping pong tables and whatever. But it was just really cool. Like, it's a different vibe kind of than the Toronto one. The Toronto one's more like
probably a little bit more low key, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little more like
the downtown one is insane.
It is. It's like a huge arcade thing. But so I'm playing. We're both super competitive. Like, she's really competitive. I'm really competitive. She's like really smart, and so like we get under each other's skin sometimes because we're just like I don't like letting anybody win on anything. So like I'm always going hard. Doesn't matter who I'm facing. But one of the games, my favorite game, the basketball, the little basketball thing.
Yeah.
I broke the high score twice.
Oh,
so
shit.
it's not a big deal or anything, but I think I'm going to try out
big
for
deal.
the Raptors. I'm pretty sure I have a spot on the team at this point. I'm like that,
baby.
you always need that like random kind of like white guy that just shoots and doesn't do anything else. That'll be me.
And you're that guy? Yeah, you're.
I hit the high score twice. Like,
All right.
I don't know.
Well.
I mean, I was going off too. It was just like a pattern of me just like going, and I was. When you notice you're doing something really well after a while, like it was like I was 30 seconds in, and I was like, I haven't missed a shot. Like I'm really like my arm was hurting. I was going so fast. I was like, oh my god, this is going really well. Like we stopped. She's like, you beat the high score again. And I was like, oh my god, I killed it.
So you beat yourself.
Yeah, I beat myself, and so pretty much the highlight of my life to this point was that, and I had a pretty awesome week.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you've found your calling.
I sent a picture to all the boys.
Basketball.
I was like, hey boys, I did it. Like I've made it big. They're like, hey man, congrats.
I made it.
Yeah. How about you?
It's been an interesting week. It's been work was, I mentioned we got a deal done. That was good. Absolutely stole this property, but we're not going to get into that in detail too much. Just a good 2-unit for a client, detached bungalow. He might top it up. He might rent it for a long time. Who knows how it goes in the usual hood?
The usual hood.
Yeah.
Nice.
What else? So Thanksgiving coming up this weekend. Pretty pumped to see. I mean, obviously we don't see too much family too frequently, so we're gonna see how many people I can pitch without being kicked out of the family this year.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. Who wants to, friends and family who wants to joint venture with Phil? I don't think I can actually advertise that, but anyway. And I started dabbling in. Like I'm a big, not only a real estate guy. I mean, I have been up until this point, but started dabbling a wee bit in the stock market with this whole Blizzard shenanigans that's happened lately. That's so far turned out okay. For those that don't know, we'll briefly mention. I don't know if most people, I'm sure, have heard of Blizzard. The company runs, gigantic games like World of Warcraft and Hearthstone and what's that shooter run? Overwatch. That's the huge one, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're also tied in with Activision, aka Call of Duty. And they had some drama with the whole Hong Kong shenanigans earlier in the week that tanked their stock price. Not tanked, but like dropped a few points pretty quickly. So I said to myself, well, I at least know something about this company. I know they're dropping Call of Duty Modern Warfare in a few weeks, and that's going to be a gigantic game.
Oh, yeah.
That has a huge competitive scene, will likely be an esport, and is going to have a ton of microtransactions, so a lot of income will come from that game. And so if they're down now, I'll pick it up now, see how it goes, maybe drop them after, the game drops and it hits kind of its like peak excitement, right? So we'll see how
Probably
that
around
goes.
Christmas, I would say. Maybe after Christmas. Christmas
thinking,
is when everybody has the game.
Yeah.
Because the rich kids get it first away. New console,
everyone
new
buys
game.
for their kids like early December, so maybe like early, I don't know much about the stock market, honestly. And this is not, intended to be advice.
No.
Please consult a professional. I'm just a guy talking about what I've done.
You're just a guy wearing a Rent's Due shirt.
Yeah. Just another piece of shit collecting everyone's rent.
Oh my god. Another big Dwayne The Rock Johnson fan.
Who's not, though? Who's not a Rock
Everybody.
fan? So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I've made, I don't know, I think I bought at 52 and change, and it's up at 55 already over a couple days. So people are already starting to forget. It was, I think when I first decided, I went on Reddit and there was like, I play a bit of Hearthstone every so often. So I was looking at the Reddit, it's the subreddit for Hearthstone.
Every so often.
300 people, like 300 threads before I got to anything that wasn't somebody saying, oh my God, I hate Blizzard. I'm leaving this company. I'm never playing your games again. Blah, 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 drama. Right. And at that point I was like, ooh, okay, people are going to forget about this in a few weeks when the COD drops. Let's give it a shot and see how this goes.
Yeah, so what happened was one of the players in Hearthstone, one of the pro players, I believe.
Yeah, Grandmaster player.
Yeah, backed Hong Kong pretty much in this whole China-Hong Kong situation. I don't want to get into it too much.
But much about it. But.
Yeah, but so we practically said, I'm for Hong Kong, like, power to you. China was like, hey, Blizzard, your guy can't do that. We're not going to, we're obviously China... Huge esports community there.
Yeah.
Lots of income towards esports. So Blizzard was like, yeah, buddy, you're banned for a year. And then everybody freaked out.
I think
saying,
he fired the shoutcasters too. Like 2 of the shoutcasters I heard got fired as well that were like on stream at the time, which is nuts.
Hong Kong, I guess, supporting.
I don't know. They might have supported.
It was bad. And now everybody's like, what the fuck? Like Blizzard, you can't do that. That's suppressing, public voice. But at the same time, you can't really say anything bad about a different country. Like it's pretty tough. They have different laws and. Let's not even talk about it. This is a real estate podcast and a.
So what are we talking about today? Moving away from video games and Blizzard and Call of Duty.
You're wearing the perfect shirt for our conversation.
This wasn't even on purpose too. I kind of woke up and I said today feels like a rent's due day, even though it's not the first of the month. But I totally forgot what topic we were recording until I was driving here, and then I realized what I was wearing and the fact that we're talking about it.
Perfect,
absolutely perfect. So. We have gone through the buy cycle of the Brrrr, and we've gone through the renovation part of it, and today we're talking about the renting part, which, again, rent's due shirt, kind of super convenient. So we'll run through how you rent your place out, how you kind of get top dollar for it, how you don't screw yourself over by putting in some shady tenants who are going to take you to the cleaners, and how this is an important step of the Brrrr process. I would say arguably... If we're comparing to buy and to renovate, maybe not the most important part, but also a very important step. You don't want to.
They're all important.
They're all important. That's true. You don't want to be putting in somebody who's going to be giving you headaches. The idea of real estate, at least the buy and hold real estate, is to kind of make it as passive as you can, right? So with your renovations, you've already gone through and made the property. Operating pretty well, so you're not going to have to deal with, plumbing calls all the time. So you'd hope you're following that up with a tenant who is not going to be calling you in the middle of the night or for random drama like their neighbor smoking pot, which is a common thread in this office recently.
And I know everybody's probably super surprised, but Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did not sponsor us. We're not sponsored by The Rock. So
if he does want to, please give me a call. You can reach out to my agent.
Can you smell?
I'm going to have to turn that down in post. Yes.
Okay.
I can't smell, actually. It's been a long day for Spiro.
I smell amazing. 1 million. Paco Rabanne. It's actually my
If anybody's watching the actual video, he smells like a Miami Vice movie at the moment.
All right. So like we said, buying, we've already talked about. If you haven't heard that, episode, go back to episode. Yeah, it should be episode 5. Well, you'll see it. It's the B and Brrrr buying.
Simple.
Go back, listen, watch it. Some good stuff in there. And if you haven't seen renovation or listen to that, that was the last. Yeah, it's true. So 4 or 5, I think. 4 or 6. Yeah. Anyways, go back, watch them, listen to them, and get up to date. Now the rent, as Phil just said. Mm-hmm. Is extremely important. I mean,
is that what I said?
You can, whatever, to paraphrase, you can buy properly. That's gonna make you the money in the end. So you're fine. I mean, buying allows you to make mistakes in the rental process or the renovation process, and you can still be in the money. And that's why it's, the most important part, as we stressed. Renovating, again, really important. But now when you come to the rent, that's where, again, like Phil just said. You could have a lot of headaches that pop up. And this is what scares a lot of people away from investing in real estate. Mm-hmm. So people get to this part and they go, first of all, how do I even do it? I'm super scared. Like, who's this random person that's going to be living in a property that I own? Like a property, the most expensive purchase that they've probably ever made. This person's going to live in there. And it's their baby now too, and it's your baby. So so it's really, I guess people get nervous about this, and you can see why. I would be too if I didn't have any prior knowledge. It's a scary experience. You don't know who you're going to put in. You don't know how they're going to treat your space. You don't know what damage or issues they're going to cause. And these are all red flags. And it scares a lot of people away from investing in real estate.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think everyone knows, right? Everyone knows somebody who tried to be a landlord at one time, didn't do this renting process properly, and has a horror story, right? Has a tenant horror story of some variety. Everyone's always, oh God, they put cement in my toilets or something like that, or they left the unit trashed and they never paid me, blah blah blah. As a management company, right? We I think we manage about 150 units now. And on most for the most part, across the board, we have no problems with our tenants, right? And it really just comes down to this step being done correctly. Having screened out your tenants correctly will greatly, absolutely massively reduce your long-term headaches with the tenants and with the building.
And
right?
screening is, once you know what to do and you follow simple steps. I mean, it's not rocket science. Anybody could do it realistically. Screening is not the hardest part. It's actually putting the effort in.
It's just you need to do it.
You need to do it, and you need to go the extra mile. You might see. Okay, so we'll start from the beginning here. Yeah. Let's say let's start at the rental application.
Cool.
Just like skipping some things.
That's skipping ahead a bit, but yes.
just for the sake of my argument here, you have a rental application in front of you. It's a standard form that we use. What is it, TREB?
Yeah, it's the AREA.
It's AREA form.
You can find them online. There's 1,000 different rental applications.
This doesn't need to be it's not a legal document of any sort. It's just for your own reference. You might see, let's say, a phone number of a reference. I'm skipping ahead here. I'm just giving an example. Phone number. A lot of people might be like, okay, they put it down, whatever. I'm not going to actually check in with it. Or they'll see, previous landlords or their current employer and just be like, okay, I believe them, whatever. Not going to call. Even though the phone call will take
30 seconds,
3 minutes tops. That's if you start talking to the person. It really takes no time. It's no effort. And you just got to do it pretty much. You just got to force yourself to do it. And that's how you learn, and you learn how to, get a little tips about people.
Yep.
Are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? Etc. So, okay, let's start.
Let's start from the top,
fresh,
right? Yeah. So you now have a completed, again, we're coming off the renovation. So you now have a brand spanking new, gorgeous unit. Maybe not top of the market, but ideally, if you listen to us in the first podcast, or in the renovation episode, you're a fraction above what I would call kind of average rental grade. We're looking at some nice floors, some pot lights, some quartz countertops, so that people are going to be more attracted to your unit versus the next. So what
you're in the top third, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. You're in the top third, not upper echelon, but you're pretty close.
Honestly, the units that we have renovated are all pretty nice, though.
Yeah.
I feel like they're surprisingly. I feel like us knowing the process of it, we might kind of downplay it a little bit. They are really nice units. Like, they could be upper echelon.
That's true. Okay, so
most don't have quartz countertops. Even the nicest ones, like that's when you're just getting there.
Yeah.
So it is the top even 20% of units that you're gonna find.
So you've got a nice unit, basically, right? You've got an absolute stunner of a unit, if you will. And now you've got to advertise it. Obviously, where are you going to find your tenants? We'll circle, like going back a little bit even from there. You got to have, I would say, quality camera. Or, I mean, you can do it with an iPhone nowadays if you get a wide-angle lens or something like that on it.
Those 11s with, like,
or the 11s with the 3 fancy-ass, wide angle cool. And a deep one, and I don't know. But they're sweet. You can do it with most phones nowadays, but you're going to want maybe a wide-angle lens of some variety so you're not having a super narrow photo. Kind of little tricks here. Make sure your edges are squared up on your photos. You're taking it from the corner of a room a little bit lower so you get as wide of a shot, makes the room look as big as possible. Make sure your lighting is good. Personal pet peeve of mine, make sure your damn toilet seats are down. I see a lot of people leave those up. It just looks kind of gross.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to show off your unit as best as possible, right? So you're going to take a high-quality set of photos, and you're going to pair that with kind of a one-pager, high-quality wording for your unit. Think like a realtor maybe. Put a little bit of a blurb in the front about why your unit is sexy, attractive, and someone's going to want to live there. Have a little bit of a breakdown in the middle of what's in your unit. How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Is there a living room? Is there quartz countertops? Is there ensuite laundry? Do you have parking? Is it for free or is it extra? All those kind of details about your unit should be included in that ad. Are utilities extra? Are they included? If it's all inclusive, talk about it because people, like the tenants, love that.
It's easier for them.
It's much easier for them. Whenever we tell tenants if a rent's all inclusive, they love it. So you've kind of paired that together, and then put in some keywords. I mean, we're living in an SEO world nowadays. If your apartment is near King and Dufferin, write King and Dufferin and Queen and Dundas and all the surrounding streets.
Close to streetcars, close to transportation.
Exactly. Any big shops, if there's grocery stores nearby, all of those things you can include in your ad. So now you've kind of paired that together. Great quality photos, great quality ad, great quality title ideally, and you're going to be posting that. Where are you going to post that? Big spots nowadays for any of our, and this is strictly speaking for Toronto, right? They're for outside of Toronto and for maybe bigger apartment units.
GTA. This is usually what you find.
Mm-hmm. So we used to do a lot of Kijiji, Craigslist type of stuff. Assuming you're not posting on MLS, of course. Mm-hmm. So we used to do a lot of Kijiji, Craigslist type of things back in the days. They've kind of fell by the wayside as they don't have a map functionality anymore, or ever. But PadMapper is something that a lot of people in Toronto have heard of. Zumper is essentially the landlord portal or the back end of PadMapper, which will post on PadMapper and like 4 other different websites. And the biggest one that kind of shocks people lately is Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace is huge.
It's especially for those units that are like under the $2,000 price point.
So the 1 bedrooms, the basements.
Yeah, your 1 beds or some, depending on the market, the 2 beds, right? A lot of stuff that's under that $2,000 price point. I've posted units at I had a short basement that was $1,300. It was dirt cheap, all inclusive. And dirt cheap is relative, obviously, to Toronto market. But I had 22,000 people look at the ad.
Jesus Christ.
An insane amount of people. I probably had my phone was just blowing up.
That could be a good ad.
What
campaign?
22,000 people. Just blast to everybody that's in the.
Yeah.
I'll post a fake rental ad, and then
we'll talk about this after the podcast.
Watch Phil and the Kid.
Yeah, honestly.
Anyways.
That's not a bad idea.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
So yeah, 22,000 is not the norm, and I obviously didn't have that many people respond to me, but the pictures were good, the title was good, the price was insane, so it got that many people interested. Facebook, it has a really good selection criteria system, and it has a map, which is what people love because they can just go to the neighborhood they want to move into. PadMapper is the same.
Yeah, with Zumper too, it compares the price to other properties in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it'll say undervalue. It kind of like what's it? Auto Trader does the same thing. Yeah. It's the same sort of thing where it'll say undervalued 20% or whatever. This is a great deal.
That's a really good point. Something to bring up as well, because sometimes you see two kind of coins from the landlord perspective, right? Sometimes you want to get a little too greedy. Mm-hmm. And say, okay, well, if the market rent for this unit is 18, but mine is really nice, or I think because people are desperate enough, and that's the worst thing I hate to see in a landlord. Oh, I think people are desperate enough, so therefore I can push them to get X. Let's say you go for 19. Let's say you go for 2,000. A few things can happen. People aren't stupid, right? People are going to realize that your unit is overpriced. Sometimes people will come still. And the people that you're often going to get for those types of units are the people that are turned down or not competitive enough to operate in the space of $1,800 for essentially the same unit. Right?
Yes.
So as a landlord, by overpricing your unit, you put yourself in a little bit of a precarious position, especially if, let's say, somebody moves in and they realize later that you've overpriced your unit. They might start building some animosity towards you for, overcharging. And it's always better to have a good relationship with your tenants, right? So what I like to do is I'll maybe knock it down by a hair, not enough to make a significant difference, right? We're already building the unit so it's nicer than the rest of the market, but if you say maybe knock $25-$50 off the current market rent, obviously unless if your property's pretty close to break even, maybe that's not the move, right? But in a lot of our Toronto properties, we're operating with $1,000+ in monthly cash flow. So for me, how I operate my portfolio, I would personally rather charge $50 less, have 200 more people look at my ad, have 30 more people show up at my showings, so I can have that many more options of potential tenants. Because I really do want to pick the best person for the unit that's not going to be that long-term headache. $50 a month to me is not worth the absolute crazy headache of maybe somebody not paying rent.
And the great part about that $50, a lot of the time when you have 20 people looking at it, and let's say 5 people put in offers, that $50 is you're gonna make the difference anyways. Yep. We're in a capitalist society. It's a free market, free-ish, I would say. There are some barriers to renting out, but at the same time, if I'm putting in an offer and I know 4 or 5 other people are, I'm gonna give you that extra $50. I have 2 stories from this summer. Same client, different units, owns a bunch of buildings in the city and has a bunch of tenants.
Yep.
One of the units I underpriced. I actually underpriced around $100 a month. Now, the client actually wanted a price that was $300 less of what I listed at. So I overpriced what the client wanted by a lot. This is another reason it's good to use someone who's a professional, because we know the market trends and we're going to find the best price for you. Anyways, so it was a little bit cheap. We had a bunch of people come in. As you said, it was overflowing with people.
Yep.
And they couldn't believe the deal. We were in like the 70% cheap range.
Right.
Like we were way below budget, which I thought was still a pretty high price. But I mean, times are crazy. So everybody was saying, I need this right now. Here's my deposit. Here's everything.
Right.
What happened? One person offered more than what we asked for. What happened then? A second person heard and offered even more. And then the best quality one we can pick from. So we had someone with a really high credit score, really good credentials.
Yep.
This is how it got flowing. On the other hand, another property that I did lease, really small, one of the smaller units you're going to find, a studio apartment, super tiny. I overpriced it. I wouldn't say I overpriced, but I priced at the level at what it should have been.
Right.
Maybe a little over. It was the average level of that area of a studio.
Yep.
But it was small, really nice.
Studios are hard in general.
They're hard, yes. But it was really nice inside too. Probably the nicest studio in the area. But same price. What happened there? It sat for a little bit.
Yep.
It was tough. The last tenant kind of, destroyed the place a little bit. It wasn't the nicest looking inside. There was some marks in the walls and whatnot. So that didn't help either. And showing it when that person was in, it was dirty. It was cluttered. It wasn't nice. It wasn't a great process.
It's tough to show.
It was definitely tough. So that one took a little bit more time. We had less interest. I did have showings, but there was less interest from it. We didn't have that I need this right now type of feeling from our potential tenants.
Yep.
Still got it rented out. Still everything was okay. Got a good price for it. The average price again. But what happened? The first one went like this. Quick. Tenants came in. Good tenant. No problems so far. Second one took a little bit more time. Still found a good tenant because we did the proper steps. Took the proper steps in the process and got to the same level. So where do you want to be? Do you want to take an extra 2 weeks and get practically the same, average market price? Or do you want to look sexy and get all those people and get the quality tenants in?
Yeah. And there's another thing in that too, right? We're talking about for our scenario for the Brrrr, we're talking about a vacant unit, a unit that you just renovated and it currently doesn't have anybody in it. If you're taking 2-3 extra weeks, that could be pushing somebody into a new month, into the first of the following month. And that's potentially another month of vacancy loss. You're paying the mortgage if you're really, really trying. And if it's a difference of $50 a month over the course of a year and a half that tenant's going to be staying, 1 month lost revenue is typically much greater than that. So that's another thing to think about. In the case of a tenant already being there, they're giving you 60 days notice. We know 60 days is tons of time in Toronto to get something rented, so you're less worried, right? But if you're coming from a vacant unit, you're going to want to make sure that thing gets rented up ASAP, especially if you just, finished outlaying an extra $50,000 for your renovations. You want to start building some capital back in that bad boy.
Yeah, you want to get people in there as quick as possible. That's the stress. Like the stress on that one fact is getting them in there. The longer they're not, the more you're paying, the more money you're losing in the end. And it makes the whole process less lucrative. That the final R, the repeat stage, will take a little bit longer. Yeah. And that's it. So,
okay, we kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but we're going to talk about so let's say you've got your ad up, you're getting, perfect best case scenario. You've got 1,000 people have responded to your ad. It's a lot, but it's not. Okay, fine.
Let's
400 people have responded to your ad over the course of a week.
That's also a lot.
You should see my basements.
Well, okay.
$1,400 basement. We'll talk about a $1,400 basement here.
See, people are going to be listening to this that do this in like Oshawa or like.
All right, we're talking about Toronto.
We're talking about Toronto.
All right, you got a bunch of people responded to your ad. Super vague
because
bunch.
People don't. That's the thing, though. People don't believe what happens in Toronto, right?
Toronto is.
Like I'm being serious.
22,000 views. People.
They'll think you're bullshitting them.
I know,
right? Like it's true. This
is real life.
It's real life.
Okay, so you have a bunch of people.
Yes.
A bunch of people.
Which in Toronto means a lot.
And a bunch of people responded to your ad.
Yeah.
I personally give them a canned response because I can't customize a response to all those people and still finish my day insane.
And you don't need to. You don't need to customize everybody.
You don't, because they're not sending you a custom response either. They're doing the same thing on the flip side because the rental market is so demanding in Toronto.
I saw your apartment. I'd like
Usually
to see
when
it.
it's on Facebook, it's like, "Hi, is this still available?"
Yeah,
the canned, the button response.
Mm-hmm. I think even PadMapper does.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you've got those people that have responded. The way that I show, I know a lot of people, especially in a sub-market that maybe isn't as busy, will do one-off showings.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an expensive unit, if it's like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, like a huge unit that's maybe a little bit tougher to rent than your traditional 1 or 2 bedroom, I could see that being justified to do, individualized showings, especially if it's maybe a little more difficult to rent. But when we're talking about our standard 1-bed, 2-bed that's going to have a ton of demand, you can't do 100 one-off showings.
No.
So what I typically will do, and I think Spiro, you do the same thing, we'll have a 1 hour, 2 hour, usually 1 hour open house at a time that is going to be mutually kind of beneficial for the most amount of people. And I'll try and do maybe a couple over the week, maybe one in the midday for those people that have evening or weekend work, and then one like 6 o'clock on a weekday or something on a weekend that can try and accommodate the most amount of people possible, so that I can drive as much traffic through that unit. I can show everyone that's coming through the unit how competitive and how attractive this unit is to everybody else as well. And I'm going to be asking them when they come to the showing to come prepared with their documents, right? I have an application that I send them ahead of time. I want a copy of their credit score. I want some proof of employment of some variety, proof of income of some variety, employment letters and pay stubs are pretty common things, but there's many other forms of income. And the credit as well is important on the application form. And again, you can get these online all over the place. Ooh, voice cracking.
Online.
Woo-hoo. Puberty's back. You can get these online all over the place, but our information on our application is pretty straightforward. I want to know kind of who you are, who's moving into the place, who the applicants are. Do you have any kids or dependents that might be moving in with you? The thing that I put probably the most importance on is the previous landlord reference.
Yes,
and not even like a lot of people just call the current landlord. I want 2, right? Think for a second, if your current landlord has been you've been an absolute nightmare for the current landlord, and you're going to call them, they're going to do what? They're going to want you to get the fuck out of their unit as soon as possible. So whoever calls, they're going to give you the best, most glowing reference. Just take them, get them out.
Yeah.
So I always go for I put more weight on the landlord that is maybe 1 or 2 years removed, and they have
nothing to lose.
They have nothing to lose. They're going to be the most honest about their experience with that guy. So if I can get that second landlord reference, that is key. That's a huge weight to put on. And then I'm going to be looking at the employment information, the rest of it. Personal references, honestly, I don't bother because most people just put their friends. Yeah. And if your friends give you a bad reference, you have bigger problems than my unit to be renting. But the employment one is important too. And we've had people in the past do things like put their friends' phone numbers on an employment letter as well. So you don't just take the employment letter for what it is and give them a holler. You Google the company. You try and find, and there's so much information on the internet. You Google the company, you find out who the boss is, you call the company directly, and you ask to be transferred to that person. All those types of things, right? So you don't want to just
time
be calling.
they'll send you to the HR department or what,
which is fine, right? I'm for the income stuff. I'm usually, for the work stuff. I'm usually just checking, make sure they actually work there. How long they've worked there, those types of things.
I check salaries too a lot of the time, depending on how nice the unit is. You know, if it's over $3,000 a month, I'm gonna want to make sure that this person could pay that.
Yeah, and from a previous landlord perspective too, you can ask them how much they've paid.
Exactly, and good tenants actually will set everything up with you. So when you do make the call to their business, if the number that they gave you on the application matches what you found online, or even if it's different and takes you to the same person, and that person is expecting you a lot of the time, as a potential tenant, you have to let your company know, I'm going to rent this place. They might give you a call. This is what you're allowed to tell them. So, I make the call, talk to HR, and they say, you had a call for Joe Smith.
Right.
We were expecting you. Your name's Spiro or whatnot, whatever. This is how much. They usually can't disclose, so they won't say this is how much he makes. A lot of the time,
it's
sometimes they do, but more
if
so you say this is the number they gave me. Is that
and they go,
yes, this is accurate, or it's accurate within a few $1,000s, whatever. That's okay. So that's what you're really looking for. And this is a step a lot of people don't take.
Yep.
And this is a step that can lead to potential issues.
Well, the income is important, right? You don't.
Very
and
important.
It's kind of an unfortunate society that we live in. I mean, Toronto style.
At the same time, very fortunate. We're not getting bombed. We're not.
Okay, that's fair.
So,
from a rental market perspective only, in a bubble or in a.
I mean, people are going to complain about something.
I know
for sure. So
but
like people are safe here, but they're going to complain. Oh, I got to pay so much.
Okay, so a lot of people, if you're thinking back in maybe some tertiary markets, or you're thinking back 10 years ago, 30% rent to income. So if your gross income is $100,000 a year, you're typically able to afford $30,000 in rent is what I mean when I say rent to income. Yes. 30% used to be kind of the golden standard, right? And if I can get a tenant to kind of meet that golden standard nowadays, I'm like, take it and run, because that is excellent, especially in Toronto. We see a lot of people, especially in the younger age group, as they're just out of school, first job, second job, that are working at like that 50% range. Which after you talk about income tax coming off of that gross number and eating, which is kind of important, and for some people transit or car or some trying to have a life, 50% of your gross income is a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just a lot of people make it operate at that level. I will never go beyond that personally. That is, everyone has their own comfort level, but for me, I typically don't even consider going beyond 40.
That's what I was going to say.
40 is like my hard line, unless I maybe have a guarantor
like
or
you
something
look
along
for
those
something
lines.
like 30. Like you
30 is my
30
gold
or
standard
less
still.
is
If
like,
I get 30 or less, they're great.
Most likely going to make all their payments on time.
The only reason maybe some people are comfortable looking at 50 is just because of how tough our rental market is.
And
right?
that's when you start looking at things like maybe a guarantor.
Exactly.
Or other,
but yeah, for
students.
All intents and purposes, let's call it 40 as like the hard line is a pretty comfortable, safe number. Again, everyone's comfort level is different.
Since I brought it up, let's talk about guarantors now, because
sure.
This is kind of where it goes.
Less common nowadays, at least for us in our portfolio, thankfully.
Yeah, we don't have, I don't think we have too many students. We're more young professionals. But this is mainly for students, I would say, or recent graduate who doesn't have solid income.
Yeah, maybe you're just moving out of mom and dad's house, so you don't necessarily, maybe you don't have a landlord reference, or don't have a
your
steady
your bank account's not fat.
Yeah,
you're just getting started. We'll get you to sign a guarantor, just kind of part of the lease. It's a little sheet. I don't think it's not illegal. Like it's not like a actual form you got to use.
No, it's a. I think there is a guarantor. It's a separate one pager. We personally have drafted a separate one pager.
Yeah.
That says hey, parent or somebody assigned is going to be equally responsible to pay the rent if this person, for this person for this unit, if the rent doesn't get paid, right? So it's just a fallback position if you maybe don't feel so confident about that applicant. But again, if you're not feeling confident about an applicant, the way that we've kind of done the unit up and priced the unit and advertised the unit, you're likely going to have another option anyways, right?
Yes.
And that's the benefit of renting in such a hot market and creating one of the nicer units on the street.
So I'm talking about more like studio apartments, even some basements. You'll find more students wanting to go there. It's cheaper.
Maybe outside the city.
Outside the city, whatever, near universities, downtown core, meaning downtown where all the businesses are, not suburb area.
Yep.
It does save you so that you can go after them, and the parents usually can pay. So student doesn't pay, you go to the parent, hey, we need this money. They're like, okay, here.
So like random minor horror story here. It's not not that extreme, right? But we had, for example, a couple of students that it was a couple and they were both students, but we let them move into a spot, and we had the guarantor was the mom of the girl that was living there. And when they moved out, they kind of moved out short notice, but because it's Toronto, we were cool with it. We knew we could get the place rented. They were going through some stuff, so we just let them out of the lease, which is totally fine, right? We made the decision to let them out. And then as they leave, they left all kinds of garbage. They had painted weird. They had a painting room, like a little art studio inside the apartment. So they messed up the walls and things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great. But because we had the mom guarantee, not only do we have somebody that's going to pay for it because the mom doesn't want her reputation to be kind of slandered a little bit, but also some ramifications for the kids, which is kind of good because you're able to pressure that responsible parent a little bit if you end up in that situation to say, okay, hey, your kid's caused this problem, fix it for me, right?
Yeah, and it's nothing wrong. That's what you would expect. I mean, your home, your investment is your baby.
Yep.
You want people to treat it the way you would.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times younger kids don't have that responsibility. They've never been in that scenario before, and they will leave it a little bit more trashed. But when you have a guarantor,
you have a fallback position, right? There are always, I mean, not always, right? But there's chances that you can take knowing that, let's say this tenant might be a little bit more of a risk. So you put in a mitigation, kind of a stop point where you can circle back and say, hey, you can fix this problem now because I took on the additional risk. But anyways,
let's get back to it.
What have we gone through now? So we talked about the showing. That was a little long pro tip. We talked about the showing. We talked about the screening a little bit. One thing that we haven't talked about in tenant screening, again, we're talking about how open the internet is nowadays.
Super open.
Creep. I look for somebody.
Phil is the biggest creep.
I am the master social media creeper. If you're applying to live in my unit, I will know everything about your life within an hour.
Creepy
that is
Phil.
On
that's what we
media.
call him, Creepy Phil.
That's not what we call me.
That's what your wife calls you.
That's a really weird thing to say. But if you want to live in my house, I want to know about you. I want to know your life. I want to know who you are. I want to know what you do for fun. If you're throwing foam parties on the weekend, it's not going to be in my house.
No.
So, I mean, Facebook is great. I'm like super creep level because there's certain things on like Facebook, for instance, if you can't find someone by name and but one of their friends or their other roommate that's moving in, you can look up them and then go into their active friends and search through that way.
And you're not trying to profile them in any way. That's illegal. We're not saying that. We're just saying it gives you a little bit more insight what they do. Is there Instagram photos of them playing catch, or is it them doing hard drugs? I mean, this is actually things you will find, though. Like it might sound ridiculous, but you will find the people who like to go hard and
so I mean,
smash things up are going to have that.
We won't say how one way or the other you as a landlord should make a decision on who you feel comfortable with, but
you can't discriminate.
They should match your personal ideals, and if you want, if you don't think that person should live in your unit, then say la vie.
At the end of the day,
you decide on an other applicant.
It is a business decision you're making.
You got to make sure your house is your investment is safe.
First things first, do you want to work with this person?
Yeah.
That means, do you want to let them live in your place? Are they going to care for it? Do they see eye to eye with you? Are you going to be able to have conversations with them? Or are they going to be like totally, my light bulb needs changing. Can you come over? It's 1 a.m.
Been there.
Yeah. So you'll find this. It's the craziest thing. But
and you can get a sense for who's going to be like that too by looking at their social media, right? So Facebook obviously being one of the bigger ones. I'm looking at them, their relationships.
Also mandatory, another pro tip, but I feel like this is a little bit more common sense. Make sure they see the unit. Don't rent out to people who have never seen the unit.
I get a lot of BC calls that are like, hey, can you Skype me or FaceTime me to see the unit?
I get those too. Yeah.
You're going to do that. They're going to move in, and then they're going to be like, oh, I never saw it, and I hate this, that, and the other thing. Can I leave now?
Yeah, and you don't want to do it. It might be lucrative. I've gotten offers $200-$300 over asking.
It's so sketchy I just want too, right?
You don't want to do it. It's you want to mitigate all your risks.
Hey, I've never seen the unit. Would you going to take $300 over what you're looking for? Yeah, sure. Okay, come in.
By the way,
first month inspection. What's that? Yeah, or there's a meth lab downstairs.
You don't want to do that. Same with other sketchy. If you see something that's a little sketchy, I'll pay you cash now.
Yeah, we've had that too. Somebody's walked up with a literally opened. I think one of our property managers was showing a place on Old Weston, and she had somebody. I mean, anyone that knows Old Weston, ooh baby.
Put a street with the story.
And guy walks up to before even seeing the unit, I think it was, right, opens up his bag, and he's got like a stack. He's just like, I'll pay for the year now. That's a red flag, right? If you haven't, if you're willing to offer that up, you're probably going to be a drug den.
Yes.
But you never know. Maybe he's an upstanding citizen who works in construction and is scared of banks. But I don't know if I'm taking that risk, right?
Upfront payments aren't the worst thing, too. On this scenario, someone comes up to me with a lot of cash. I'm not accepting it.
No. Cash in general, I don't accept for rent sketchy. Because it's one of those things. It's
where
like,
did you get it?
Yeah, well, I don't even care where. I'm not, I'm not a bank giving you a mortgage, so I'm not like anti-money laundering trying to figure out where the cash came from. But I'm more concerned with, like, I want a paper trail, right? I don't want you to come back and say, Phil took my money, and have Phil be able to say, oh, nope, never got it.
Well, okay, for, like, you
Going
are
to Jamaica.
you are anti-money laundering, though. Let's not put that out into the public right now.
That's fair.
Hi, I'm Phil. I love doing illegal things. Like,
no. I meant from a bank's,
yes, you are in a
policy
bank
perspective.
Yes, you are not CIBC. You are Phil.
That's why I run all my laundromats. So
man.
don't take cash for rent, folks.
No, but again, as I said, sometimes people don't have that previous. Maybe they just got a new job. I've dealt with this before. Someone moves into the city from
they offer you like
international.
2 last month's rent kind of thing.
Yeah, they're like, here's half the year up front. Look at me. I have a new job.
Yeah.
As the new job says, yes, they work here, but they've only worked here for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and you're like, it's not as certain. But they seem like a good person. Their credit's good. They have the backup. You're feeling kind of like, maybe I'll rent it to them.
Yeah.
They seem really good. You feel kind of for them in that situation. Like, look, I just moved here, or whatever it is. I have all my what's the saying? Ruts in a row.
Ducks in a row. I got my ruts in a row. Yeah.
Ducks in a row. Whatever. Ducks in a row. Like, here's a few extra months. I'm gonna pay it. Like, here you go.
Yeah.
That's, again, it's your discretion at that point. We're
So
not saying don't look at them and be like, no.
We're not allowed to, just as caveat there, as landlords, we are not allowed to ask somebody. We're not supposed to be like,
you can
hey,
ask,
buddy,
but it's not legal. Like,
I mean, get back to the anti-money laundering here.
Well, no. I mean, like, you could. I'm pretty sure you can ask for it. They could just say no.
You're not supposed to be able. Like, it says it in the Ontario lease, is that you're not.
It says it's last month's rent is the
just 1 month period.
Yeah.
So, anyways, if they offer it, maybe consider it, but get it on paper that they offered, kind of thing. This is 100% agreed upon between both parties, etc. I would try and avoid it if you can. Just, it's messier than it needs to be. It is, right?
Just do the average things. Get last month's rent.
That's it. Keep it normal. Sometimes. Keep it boring.
Yeah.
So we are done screening. We've creeped our person. We know that this person is a absolute rock star as a tenant. Has great income. They've got good credit. Nothing scary on their credit report. Their social media looks passable. What's the next step? So we're going to be doing 2 things. We're going to be writing up our lease, obviously, and we're going to be collecting our first and last month's rent. So you want to lock them into that unit, right? You want, when they sign the lease, at least you want some kind of just gonna kick them in the room, lock the door, and away we go. It's yours. It's yours now, sucker. So I want some kind of the lease. Obviously, some documents need to be signed, right? So in Ontario, we, as of a year and a half ago or so, we have a standard lease agreement. If you haven't found it, just Google Ontario standard lease.
Really long.
I do agree. It is awesome because there were a lot of different leases in the past. Every landlord had their own different setup, different set of rules, which is why the government, I think, stepped in and said, hold on. Not all of these meet the Residential Tenancies Act, so we're going to just clean this up and make everyone use this.
Most tenants aren't very knowledgeable about what to look for, what's okay.
And that's where a lot of shady landlords were putting in some shady clauses and saying, hey, tenant X, you have to pay for all repairs in the unit, even if they're not just general wear and tear and things like that, right? Stuff that landlords weren't allowed to be doing. So the government stepped in and said, hey, here's one lease. If you haven't seen it, Ontario standard lease, just type it in Google and it'll probably be the first thing that pops up. It's like 14
pages. It's super long.
It is gigantic.
It's like kind of a hassle, but
it is what it is. It's straightforward. It's nice that they have it. So we've got we're drafting up the lease, right? And typically what I'll also do is I'll include a Schedule A because the lease is pretty tenant forward, and it doesn't cover everything that I want to deal with. So, I mean, you as a landlord may have your own certain clauses that you want. Check through the Residential Tenancies Act first to make sure they don't, break any rules. But if you have a clause or a few clauses that you want to add, you can do an additional Schedule A, let's call it, or an addendum, let's call it, that gets attached to the lease to be signed. So you're going to have everyone sign off on that. A little bit of a pro tip. We have so many e-signing tools available nowadays. You mean DocuSign for those that aren't realtors, AuthentiSign for those that are. I'm sure there's 100 other options you can use, right?
Is DocuSign free though?
No, you gotta pay for Docu. I think most of them you have to pay for.
Yeah, most of them.
Like we pay for Advertise through our fees, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes your life so much easier though. If it's $5 a month and saves you from having to drive around and meet up tenants and sign off paper documents. Oh my god, I would always
use a realtor.
Everything nowadays, or just use your
or property management
realtor. So there's that. Obviously, try and have it e-signed, and then once I've got the documents signed off, either before or after, whatever your comfort level is or the tenant's comfort level is, assuming you've got the documents signed and you're probably a month away from move-in, right? Mm-hmm. You're gonna want some kind of payment to lock you in. Usually at least last month's rent, but a lot of times first and last is pretty standard. And I mean, I the very least want the full first and last before I'm giving this person keys. But in the meantime, let's say there is a month gap. I don't want that person being able to say, hey, I'm out of here. I decided on a different unit even though I signed a lease with you kind of thing, right? So that's where you get that first and last, or like I said, at least that last month's rent up front so that person can't break the contract and walk away. Thinking realistically, yeah, sure, you could probably go after them if they signed a lease, didn't put any money down. But what's realistically going to happen is you're just going to say, okay, it's really not worth my time or money to follow this and to fight this. I'm going to go back and relist
that much.
Yeah, it's not worth it. So you get them to put their last month's rent at the very least. They're never walking away from you at that point, or at least I haven't had someone do it yet. And then
that'd be crazy.
I know.
It's a lot of money just to walk away.
Yeah. And then at any point before they move in, I'm collecting the rest of it if there is anything left. I'm not giving anybody keys until I have the full first and last. And in all of our leases as well, they're going to be required to have their own tenant's content insurance for their tenant stuff. Yeah. That's another thing a lot of times that I will, or other landlords will check prior to allowing them to move in. I want to see a copy of the policy, right? And that's just, let's say it's a basement unit and there's a flood. I mean, obviously, the landlord's responsibility is to repair the unit to a livable state. The tenant's responsibility should be to repair their stuff. But in the case where the tenant doesn't have it, there's always a dispute. And it's just easier to avoid the dispute.
And it makes sense too. I mean, I'd be pissed off if my stuff were ruined because of a flood in a place I'm renting. Mm-hmm. But if I have that proper insurance
coverage,
then it's fine.
Then you go through the proper channels. It sucks,
but you have someone who's going to give you the money. Not the
you have a channel to go through. That's a proper process. You
have to think of yourself. Put yourself in the tenant's shoes in any scenario. What's going to make you the happiest? As the tenant, think about that. That's why you want the place to look nice. You want to be able to live in there. If you don't want to live in your unit, you're going to get people not like you.
That's a very good point, right? You're going to be looking for people that are likely very like-minded, right? And if you're looking at, if your unit's a dump and you wouldn't live in your unit, what are you going to really expect?
You're not going to get someone who's like you. It's just
what
it's
really
that easy.
Expect there?
I mean, you really can't overthink this process. You just got to do all the basics. It's one of those things. Create a checklist.
Yep.
I mean, go rewatch this video and create a checklist. We might even have a checklist coming in the future, a basic one.
That's a whole lot of work. 1-page checklist is. It's almost Thanksgiving, man. I'm off. I'm out of here for the weekend.
While we eat turkey, maybe. Right. Well, definitely not. But I'm just saying, it's not too hard to make a checklist. It's really common sense. Tasks. They're not. It's what would you do? What do you want? How much do you want to protect yourself at the end of the day? If you don't give a shit, then throw anybody in.
And that happens too, right? We've seen, and maybe we've pretty much run through the entire process at this point. So you've gone and you moved this person in, and you're more or less going to set it and forget it if you put the right person in at that point.
Exactly.
So call that the end. Let's talk about for a second what happens. Let's go into a couple of maybe lighter tenant horror stories and talk about what happens when either you don't have the choice. So let's say you've bought a property that's currently tenanted, which is something that I try and avoid if possible, or you've gone and just not cared, and you've just taken the first applicant that comes to you without reviewing any documents, without doing any kind of research. Hey, I got somebody. That's awesome, right? No longer vacant. Throwing that person in there. There is actually a pretty good chance that you're just fine, to be honest, because, I mean, I'm talking from a Toronto perspective. Yeah. You're more likely going to be just fine, but you are greatly increasing your chance to not be just fine. So, there's a couple things that we've had. Some landlords have not done their research correctly, done the leasing themselves, and we have some units that are did have like 10 people in a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, the city's not going to like you that.
Huh? Are they out now?
In process. In process. I mean,
fun.
there is a family of probably 10 or so.
Family.
Yeah. 10 to 15 or so. Don't fit in the unit, overflowing all the time. Doesn't, they just destroy things because there's so many people coming in and out so frequently. They fight on the front lawn. Like, this isn't even a joke. The city gets called, like, frequently because they fight on the front lawn.
You guys didn't put those people in.
No, we did not, thankfully. There is so much garbage that no matter how many garbage bins you order from the city, it just can't keep up. Always getting citations for overflowing garbage. Like, just absolute shit show.
Nightmare.
You know what? They still pay the rent, which is great. So the rent comes in on time. The property still operates, but when they're out, it's going to be quite a repair. So that's something that was, the landlord just kind of said, oh, hey, sweet, first tenant's great. Okay, awesome, in you go. And then all of a sudden there was a whole squad in there.
Yeah. And
so that was one that wasn't cool. Another one, and this is an interesting one because as a landlord, you're really, especially in Ontario, you're not allowed to tell someone they can't have pets.
No.
Right? You can't tell someone that hey, you can't have your dog come with you in the unit. Hey, you can't have your cat come with you. I know some guys will screen it out. Honestly, we live in Toronto. 50% of the people have bloody pets anyways. I have a dog. She's absolutely lovely. She has not harmed our place in any way, shape, or form. Right? I'm pro pets all day long. However, caveat, and this one was my fault. Something that I never even realized. We put this girl in a basement apartment, and I don't know how I could have found this out, but we go for a unit inspection. So we do 2 unit inspections a year. Check on the unit, make sure the smoke detectors are still operational, change batteries, check on the fire extinguishers, all that stuff to make sure we have a record of the unit being safe to live in very frequently. And she had this random curtain over something in the living room, and I kind of just pulled back the curtain, and she had about 12 to 15 tanks of snakes.
Oh my god!
It was just like, heebie-jeebies, like immediately. So she was breeding. I don't know what. I don't know what kind of snakes. I'm not like a snake guy, but she was breeding snakes in the unit, and like, I mean, I guess I could have called that a business and gone after her in some way, shape, or form. Thankfully, she moved out shortly after, but I was like, you're thinking back to like those goosebump stories. Like, what if one of these escapes and they go to the upper tenants?
Oh my god,
and
they're
like
in the toilet,
crawling through the vents.
Oh my god, man.
But that was a weird one.
Ugh.
Nothing. I mean, ultimately, I guess there was nothing really wrong with it. The snakes were contained. It was just strange.
Yeah, that is a little strange.
It was real strange.
I mean, the only good reason, I don't even know if it's a great reason, but if let's say you have a triplex or you have different units and you have like a big barky loud dog,
yeah, you got to be considerate of the other people.
Yeah, so that's where the issue arises. I mean, sometimes I'll kind of ask, how's your dog? Like, is it a loud, reckless dog?
It's the same with like kids.
And kids.
It's if you have like a 1-year-old, they're gonna be crying a lot. It's life.
It is.
But unfortunately, if you're in a home that has other people,
yeah,
that your kids, your dogs, you are as the tenant are going to be responsible for all of them. And if you as a unit are doing something that's going to be disturbing the other people that live in that building, unfortunately, that's going to fall back on you, and you're going to have to deal with that one way or the other.
So it does mitigate risk.
So you try
you don't want the loudest dog. You don't want 5 kids on a 1-floor unit where there's people above and
10
people below. And also, you have to think of it this way, too. You have 10 people living in a unit. I'm using a ridiculous number.
We have one.
One, but I mean, imagine the wear and tear on the toilets, the showers, the sinks.
Imagine your utility bills.
The utility, the lights, everything's on. The floors even, which is a weird thing to think about, but you have 10 people walking around all day for years, maybe 2 years, maybe 3, maybe 10, worst case scenario. Which is what happens when 10 people live in there. They stay.
They're staying forever.
They stay forever. When you have like 2 or 3 or a small family, 4, but let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. It's that many people taking a shit, that many people showering, it's that many people walking across the room and making food.
Especially considering the unit in question is a one bathroom.
Really, 10 people?
Yeah, man.
Oh my god, they definitely. Nah, I'm not.
Anyways, so okay, we'll talk about Phil's last tenant horror story, and this is back when we were investing in Hamilton, And this is a unit
hammer.
this is early hammer days. This is very early hammered, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, so not that early hammer days.
Steel
like
City.
Deep off, I guess, what's the street? Barton is like the sketchy street when you go super far west. Like, we bought a fourplex for like 160 grand or something like that. So it was,
what was
this was like 6 or 7 years ago.
How come I've never heard about this?
Because it's a sketchy shithole.
You don't know.
We bought a second one on the same street.
You don't own them anymore?
No, this is with the company that I used to work with. So not personal purchases, but these were properties that I found, managed, etc. So we bought a fourplex for dirt cheap. It was fully tenanted. Actually, I think one unit was vacant, but the other 3 units were fully tenanted.
Okay.
Top 2 floors, great-ish. Main floor, okay, it was vacant, so we re-rented. Great.
Nice.
Basement guy, on the other hand, not my biggest fan. I'm not the biggest fan of him, I should say. So this is a unit, when we bought it, it was like he had 8 cats or something like that.
Nice.
He would leave the windows open so the cats would come in and out all the time.
Okay.
Floors were pissed on. It was vinyl floor, but the vinyl floor had been torn away through the plywood subfloor into the concrete. And so the whole unit was like wavy and all these dips.
What?
Yeah, it was a wreck.
How? The cats?
Cats pissing, eating, clawing, him walking for years, right?
Oh,
it was a small unit. It was
disgusting.
It was the worst thing to ever go walk through. Shout out to Danielle. Thank you for going through that with me. If you're watching, that was the good old days of going through the shitholes in the hammer. Were totally a lot of fun. But so I had to go to a unit inspection, and this was the day that I decided this guy's getting evicted. We had to go do a unit inspection, and I drove from Toronto to Hamilton in my fancy little race car at the time to do the unit inspection. I walk in the door, and this guy's like a cold room type of thing, and I think all of his cats hung out in the cold room because that's where like one of the open windows were. I open the door, and it's just like a cloud of fleas.
Oh my god,
it was
so
the
gross.
most revolting. It's like, and again, we bought this unit with him in it. We bought it this way. I mean, I didn't know there were fleas, but we went in fully aware of the situation, right? So it's not like this guy did anything that we weren't expecting. We were fully aware of the state of the unit. We had plans to turn the unit around when he moved out, etc. He was still paying his rent, so it was all good and fine. However, then he gave Phil fleas, and then he was no longer my best friend. So yeah, I walk into that thing covered, like just fucking, and I have never touched fleas in my life at this point, and it was the most revolting thing. They're jumping all over, they're biting and jumping, man. And so I book it out of the unit. I'm like basically just shaking off everything. I didn't finish the unit inspection, obviously, at that point. This was like the first room I was looking at.
Ew.
And I had to drive back to Toronto not covered at this point, but still quite a few fleas. Driving on the highway, standard car, heavy clutch. And I've got fleas in my pant legs, fucking bouncing around, jumping. I'm like slapping myself the entire drive. Slap, shift, drive, shift, slap. It was an absolute mess. Got home, like burned the clothes, showered for like an hour, and then never went back to Hamilton again.
What happened with that?
It ended up, I don't know, I left the company, ended up getting sold, I think. But
you're just like,
I didn't leave the company because of the fleas. But that was, I mean, again, that's what happens when one thing, you don't screen your tenants, and number 2, you inherit tenants. That is one of the major reasons that I'm a huge fan of getting buildings vacant. Is
you pay
more
a premium for
vacant units. You pay a premium for vacant units
because you don't get any shitty tenants.
That's true.
A lot of the time people sell buildings because they're shitty tenants.
Even if the tenants are good, a lot of the time
you can get more.
It's a level. It's 2 things, right? It's more money. Sure, that's great. If the unit's close to market rent, fine. But if the units, I mean, a lot of times are so far from market rent that it's much better to have them vacant and $600. But I like to level set with my tenants, right? I don't like to go into an existing relationship. I don't know how that other person managed the building. I have no idea if they respect the landlord or not. I like to change things around, put in new sets of tenants, or at least level set with the existing, saying, hey, new sheriff in town, right? These are the new rules. This is how I operate. I don't care what the other guy did. And that's much easier to do when you just don't inherit tenants, right?
Yes.
Obviously, every deal is individually specific and every person has their own criteria. That's just something I prefer, especially since I got fleas.
Filthy Phil and the Fleas.
Filthy Phil. Great sandwiches over at Filthy Phil's.
That's a place?
Yeah, it's in the stockyards. Brendan and I went one time, and I don't know, he's called me Filthy Phil ever since. But they're damn good. Like Philly, it's like a Philly cheesesteak restaurant.
Oh, okay.
And that's all they do.
I'm
And it's
call
called
you
Filthy
Philly
Phil's.
cheesesteak.
Yeah,
you can't even.
That's
eat
not
them,
original at all. People have called me that my entire life. Enough about fleas. That got me riled up.
Yeah,
that brought back some bad memories.
Let's not end this episode on that note.
No, well, you just want you avoid it.
This is the caution, and this is why people.
These are the so again, to put it all into perspective, I have been part of purchasing, owning, managing, renovating, etc. hundreds and hundreds of units at this point, right?
Yes.
Like throughout my career as a property manager for quite a long time, and into current, I think it's probably been I don't know, close to 1,000 units, I guess, and we're talking about over quite a few years, and I have a handful of horror stories.
Yeah.
Your average investor is going to have 1 to 5 properties, let's call it. So, I mean, so long as you do the due diligence up front over your 1 to 5 properties, it should be very low maintenance, a fairly passive activity. These are just a handful of things that could go wrong if maybe you're not taking a deeper look into your tenants, or in the case of Flea Guy, we kind of went in knowing that potentially was going to be a problem, and, well, Phil just didn't think he was going to get fleas. But, hey.
And if you follow the
some
steps
days you get fleas.
No.
Most days you don't.
You never get fleas unless you're filthy Phil in the ham. In the hammer.
Filthy Phil in the ham. Ooh. All right, we're going to do a video tour.
Ooh.
We're going to go do a drive-by tour of those properties and see how they're doing nowadays.
I don't think we can.
Yeah, outside.
Okay, well. If you follow the steps that we've sort of outlined in this, well, not sort of, we have outlined. I mean, do what you want. But if you follow those steps and take it seriously, do your due diligence, and even if this is your first purchase, or maybe your first, second, maybe even third, you might want professional help and just to watch. Maybe it's one unit. Get a realtor. Come
one that knows what they're doing.
Yeah,
one that's maybe specialized in leasing.
Yes.
Not plugging myself. I mean, like, just in general.
Right? Plug yourself. Come to us.
No, okay, fine. Fuck it. Come to me. or Spiro.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. I say us. He says me. I see how it is, Filthy Phil. So
Filthy Phil's a greedy bitch.
Watch what Phil or I do, or another realtor, whoever, how they do their job. I mean, ask them. So what did you do here? I'm sure they'll be more than happy to tell you. Don't be up their ass about it. But say, hey, listen, I want to be doing this on my own. Be straight up. They're gonna be like, okay, that's totally fine. That's fair. Say, how do you do this process? Kind of walk me through it. Show me how to do it. And you'll kind of learn the tips and tricks. I mean, we do practically what we both just told you. So it's not like we have this magic potion or this secret formula of how we do our work. There are no secret formulas. Anybody who says there's a secret formula is full of shit. Like, it's true. Like,
but you want them to buy our $10,000 course. It's a secret formula. You gotta.
That's not yet. I'm saving that until after our book deal.
There you go. All right.
And then we'll
hold a weekend summit for $300, and then you might get upgraded to the $10,000 pro plan.
Yeah.
And then eventually, if you want to be part of our VIP members club, it's a measly 100 Gs.
100 Gs, yeah, nothing. All right, let's
Phil and the Kid, the gurus.
We'll wrap this up now.
Yeah, you've listened to us drone on for long enough.
Yeah, so go back, listen if you haven't, to buy and renovate. This is rent. Then we're gonna have episode on refinancing and repeating the process. So be sure to stay tuned. Those are going to be really interesting, I think. And
the repeat part especially.
The repeat part is where you're going to really, I think it opens people's eyes. That's where when we talk to people that don't have a clue about Toronto, and I don't mean they're oblivious. I mean, they've heard all the negatives, like, oh, it's really high prices.
They don't know how it could work, right?
Yeah, they don't understand how it could work. And the repeat part is very lucrative. That's where people start going, maybe I'll put my money in Toronto instead of places around Toronto, even though they're all great. I'm never going to say don't buy property. I mean, there are, maybe I will sometimes say don't buy. I mean, if you're overpaying, if it's a shit, like, I don't know.
If Toronto's out of your price point, for example, there are many other markets that work.
But if
Just
it is
do your research and have your power team in those locations. Right?
If it is in your price range, I do say go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
In the right spot.
So thanks for listening again. You can find me at spirovrysellus.com. SPIROVRYSELLAS.
I think that's the first time you've actually spelled your name. So I wonder how many people are looking at like Spiro, Vry, Sell Ass.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you just kind of click on phil&thekid, you'll find
it'll show up.
Yeah,
you can find us.
You'll find
it's
me
not hard.
and you'll find Phil. Be sure to check us out on Apple Music, Spotify, SoundCloud. What is it? Not Apple Music. Sorry.
It's Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all that stuff. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, share.
Smash that like button.
Subscribe to our channel and share with others. I mean, that's the best compliment we can ask for is, and we've seen it happening. A lot of our friends and a lot of even acquaintances have been like, hey, I showed this podcast to my parents, or I showed this podcast to my cousin. They really like it. And I mean, it means a lot. Thanks for all the feedback. I want to thank every single one of you who watch. I mean, it does mean a lot to us. And again, we're not doing this to become famous. Obviously, we're not doing this for money.
What? You're not.
I mean,
I'm expecting a movie deal out of this.
Yeah, hey, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, hit us up. Rent's
right.
due, baby.
You want to go evict people and get fleas? Let's do this.
Oh my god. All right, let's wrap it up.
See you later.